So I'm not going to lie to you guys. You're probably better off having a more entertaining time reading the history version. Like, find a history book and read the story of Napoleon as opposed to this film because, woof. So Napoleon is a new historical drama epic starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by the great Ridley Scott, who did films like Blade Runner, Aliens, The Martian, Gladiator, a bunch of great stuff and some not so good stuff. But I had a lot of high hopes going into this film, especially with Joaquin Phoenix playing the lead role because the dude just absolutely crushes pretty much every role he does. And I think he does do a good job here, but we'll get to him specifically in a little bit. But first, so the general story here is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, the notorious leader of France, who essentially we're seeing a bunch of events through his life up until his death. It's a historical biopic drama that is about 2.5 hours long. It felt a little longer, not gonna lie. Let's talk about the performances here because I think Joaquin Phoenix, I don't think it's Oscar worthy, but he's great. He's him. He really plays this character with some nuance here, but I do feel like there is some problems with the editing and the pacing that kind of might diminish his performance that was actually there. And I know that there's supposed to be like a 4-hour version of this, like a 4 hour 10 minutes version of this film that'll eventually come to Apple TV Plus, which is one of the best streaming services, if not the best streaming service you can get right now, just in terms of quality. Quality, not quantity. I know it's not Netflix, where they got a bunch of stuff, but Apple TV just cranks out so much good stuff. And I'll be curious to see. I'm not anxious, like I'm not going to run out and watch it right away if they put it up on Apple TV Plus. But I'm curious to see what a 4-hour version of this would look like, because the 2.5 hour version just feels so incomplete. I feel like the performances are incomplete when you have a Joaquin Phoenix who I feel like gives a good performance, but I just don't feel like it was all there. Vanessa Kirby, who plays Josephine, the wife of Napoleon in the film, she's got a lot of character stuff, but it does feel like they skip around. It feels like we're missing a bunch of stuff. This story just feels like a bunch of Swiss cheese because I feel like you get something, there's a hole, then we're on to something else. It just felt jumbled and all over the place, and I literally fell asleep many times in this movie. I kept nodding off. I went with my brother-in-law to see this. I guess he says he stayed awake. I don't believe him that he did. I nodded off several times during this. And it's not that it was boring. It was just that it just didn't engage me the way I thought. The narrative did not keep me as engaged as I would like, which I guess is the definition of boring. But it didn't captivate me. It didn't keep me wanting to go, ooh, what happens next? Ooh, what happens next? It was like literally just getting the cliff notes to Napoleon's story, which a lot of movies usually do, which is usually fine. But here, specifically here, I think it just needed so much more to breathe. One moment you have a character who is aligning himself with Napoleon, and they're having a nice little scene, an interaction, great dialogue going back and forth, and all of a sudden we jump to them being enemies it probably really happened, but for the sake of it being a story, and I know they're fabricating probably some of this stuff to turn it into a narrative for a film, it just didn't work. It felt like a piece was missing to connect A and C. It felt like B was not even there. And that was the big problem with this. And I had high hopes because, it looks gorgeous. Let's get that out of the way. Look, the cinematography is fantastic. The special effects are on point. The acting is awesome. I think some of the directing choices may be a little odd at times, but I think it's there. There is a shell of a good movie in here, but it's missing so much stuff. It just feels like it is. And I'm going to give the theatrical version of this a grade. And I think I get having a director's cut. I get it. Sometimes, a studio will not let you release your big 4-hour epic because it's not going to do well. It usually just doesn't. So I get it releasing a theatrical version of this. But it does feel like they could have streamlined this film into something a little easier and then give us a director's cut. Not say, well, here's a theatrical version that's boring as heck. Wait till you see the full 4-hour version. That is the chef's kiss version you want to see. That's the version you got to see. And I don't feel like as audience members we should have to do that in order to see a good movie. Like, we have to put up with this version and then have to turn around and then watch a 4-hour version of the same movie we already watched. Granted, it could be totally different. It could be a totally different movie. odds are, maybe not. As long as it fleshes something out, kind of like what I felt like the Justice League films did, like when we had the theatrical version. That wasn't really Zack Snyder's vision, and then we got Zack Snyder's vision, and granted, he did add a bunch of stuff later, but, the two different films with essentially the same bones, the same skeleton, but there was just more meat on the Zack Snyder cut of that that made me go, wow, this is one of the best comic book films I've seen, to the other one being like, you could see where it could have been had they added that meat to the bones of that movie, and what got shredded, what was just lacking in that. So I will be curious on that front for what a Napoleon director's cut would look like. I know people reference Kingdom of Heaven, I think, is the other film he did that the theatrical version was not great, and then the director's cut was incredible, which, granted, never seen. I might have to now, but if it's that situation, I think that's unfortunate that we have to wait to do that. We should just get the good version in theater. Even if it's 4 hours, give us the best version of the film possible, because this film right here, I'm giving a C+. Like, I see the bones, I see some of the good stuff in there, but at the end of the day, I was bored, and I don't think it was terrible, but it's just not great. Definitely by no means any bad, like terrible, because it's handled by a good filmmaker, a guy who knows what he's doing, but it does feel like it was more, they had to trim it down to put it into a theater because they weren't going to be able to release a 4-hour version of this, which, whatever. Like I said, I think I would rather go to a theater to see a good movie that's 4 hours long than a shortened version of that movie that isn't any good. Even at 2.5 hours, that's still too dang long for this particular version. So, with that being said, guys, what do you think about Napoleon? Have you gone out to see it this Thanksgiving weekend? Do you plan on seeing it now, or are you going to wait for the director's cut that eventually comes out on Apple? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, guys, if you could please hit the like button, subscribe button, the little bell notification, be notified whenever I drop new videos. It would be greatly appreciated. And hopefully everybody's having a great Thanksgiving weekend. I know this movie came out a few days ago, and I'm just kind of finally settling down. Family, Thanksgiving, turkey, all that stuff. Been busy. And I got another one coming up soon, hopefully, too. So until then, guys, I'll be seeing you.